What's groovy, everybody? It's the White Magical Tiger. Well, some of y'all might be wondering, for you all that don't know me, who is this dude? Is he just some just naked hippie dude on some random beach in Mexico? And the answer to that question is yes. Yes, I am some just random dude, hippie dude, spiritual hippie dude on a nudist beach in Mexico. However, you should still take me seriously in this video. And is this for my OnlyFans account? No, of course not. I would never degrade myself like that, and I'm preserving myself and saving myself out of respect for my future wife. So for all you ladies that want me to create an OnlyFans account, and I know I'd be a top earner making millions and millions of dollars, but I just can't whore myself out like that. I just can't be a hoe like that. And I'm here to be pure. One of my role models is the Mother Mary, the Virgin Mother Mary. So just some of my advice to some of the other lady friends out there: don't whore yourself out. Don't be a hoe on OnlyFans. Think of your future husband. Think of your future children. You don't need to be a prostitute. You don't need to be a whore. But that's not the point of today's video. The point of today's video is about what's going on in Hawaii. And this is the truth about the wildfires. Now, 99% of people in the world are going to buy whatever the TV says, whatever the television programming says. They're just going to get programmed with the mainstream message. But of course, on this channel, our religion is truth. We speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. At least I do my best to do that. And if you're not aware, the truth is very unpopular in this day and age. And that's because we're living in a fallen world. We're living in the last days. We're living in the end times. So essentially, what's going on in Hawaii then, if it's not the wildfires? And why am I talking about it? Well, I've spent about the last 3 years living in Hawaii. And so aloha to all my brothers and sisters in Hawaii. Aloha keakua. Essentially that means aloha. Ha means breath. Alo means presence. Aloha means presence of the breath. So let's breathe in. Akua means God. Aloha keakua means God is the presence of the breath. And what is spirit? Spirit means breath. Look at the etymology of spirit. It means breath. So what's the Holy Spirit? This is the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is the prana within the breath, the life force, the chi, the ki. But that's not really the point of today's video either. But they diagnosed me with ADHD when I was a child, so maybe that's a little bit of that coming through. And it's not a disability. ADHD is a gift. I love it. Okay, so what's going on then? It's an energy weapon. Straight up, it's an energy weapon. Check out this video from YouTube.
ODDTV.
So the recent California fires are very strange and suspect, to say the least. We have specific areas being burned, like energy was being directed at certain things. In drone footage of the aftermath, we see houses completely obliterated and turned to ash while the surrounding landscapes and trees are totally fine. Here is a clip courtesy of Serbian Conspiracy. I'll put a link in the description. You'll notice here that stores and restaurants are wiped out while other things are still in perfect shape. Other buildings are fine, trees are untouched, but specific structures are just devastated. You gotta ask yourself, what's up with that? How did the fires get to these certain buildings but the surrounding areas, including the parking lot, look normal? Is this the result of direct energy weapons? Ranged weapons that inflict damage on a target by emitting highly focused energy? The answer is most likely yes, but most people believe that these kind of weapons are just science fiction, due to movies like Austin Powers, for instance.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to begin phase 2 of our evil project. Or is it phase 3? I don't know phases. Anyways, this is the phase in which we put a giant laser on the moon. As you know, the moon rotates around the Earth like so. When the moon reaches its appropriate lunar alignment, it will destroy Washington, D.C. Anyways, the key to this plan is the giant laser.
But in reality, these direct energy weapons are admitted to be real and are documented. Hear that? Now let's watch a clip from YouTube channel In Truth by Grace. Link will be in the description, of course.
This is not a carbon fire. This is the only fire in the whole wide world that's considered a forest fire where the forest did not burn. The forest didn't burn here. All the glass melted. All the structural materials that used to be a house have disappeared. They have disappeared. You have a couple of bent poles here, a couple of poles that are bent, but you have absolutely no materials. The houses have not fallen. The houses have disappeared. The materials of these contents of these houses are gone. Let's listen to what they have to say here. She's going to talk a little bit about it. Well, first, let's go here. I want to show you where these fires are. Because if you're like me, you didn't know that there were 14 separate fires. How did 14 separate fires start over such a wide area? You guys, this isn't normal. This is not how it works. These homes didn't fall. These homes didn't burn. These homes disappeared. There's nothing left. There's not even a toilet bowl or a bathtub. This is one of the cars or trucks or something that was in this fire, and you'll notice that the glass here, which has a melting point of between 2,600 and 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? We're talking forge, foundry, furnace temperatures to melt this glass. Glass does not melt on its own, guys. Open air fires do not create this kind of complete combustion of the materials, all right?
How did they create it?
We are dealing with microwave weapon technology. How else would this tree catch on fire from the inside?
A haunting but mesmerizing scene from the wildfires in Sonoma County. A man came across this tree burning from the inside out. Matthew McDermott was driving around looking for escape routes as multiple fires closed in on the area he was in. The tree appears to be hollowed out by embers and flames.
Right? You could look this up. This is all over the news. Tree on fire from the inside. The only time that happens is when trees are struck by lightning, which in itself is a direct energy, right? This whole thing is all messed up. Hurricane after hurricane, which are also able to be created and controlled by man. And now this? And right on cue, we have the Geostorm movie coming out, which has some truth in it.
We can control our weather.
But it's mostly outer space reinforcement propaganda.
The Senate committee will now hear from Jacob Lawson, Climate ISS Chief Coordinator. May the record reflect that he was nearly 1 hour late.
Yeah, sorry about that. I literally had to fly in from outer space.
Are all these things a distraction from the Vegas incident? Probably. These days, everything seems to be a distraction from something else. Anyway, I'll put some links for other channels that do a great job at covering these things. Check out In Truth by Grace, aplaintruth.info, my man Richie from Boston, of course, Leak Project, and yeah, there are many others. Salute to all the truth seekers, despite some of our differences. Stay vigilant and keep at it. Much love from ODD TV. I'm gone.
Now, if that's not enough for you, we have the President of the United States, Lyndon B. Johnson, who was the Vice President of JFK. When JFK was assassinated, LBJ became president, and this is what he had to say. He said, "He who controls the weather controls the world."
It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world. That will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
Now that's the President of the United States. Now, this gets into something like, how are they doing this? Well, one of the ways that they're doing this is that they're spraying chemicals in the sky. A lot of people want to say, oh, it's just contrails, it's normal, that's what planes are doing. And it's like, well, here's another video. I can't put it here in this one, but it's on a different website because it got taken down from YouTube. YouTube banned it. So if I re-upload it here, they'll probably ban it as well. And I already have a strike on my channel, which I'm very proud of. I'm very happy of. Thank you, YouTube, for giving me a strike. That means I'm doing a good job of telling the truth. Unfortunately, my channel's still up, so that means I'm not speaking enough truth. So that's one of my goals, is to get completely banned off YouTube, but well, I guess I could just put the video in here and get a strike, but that kind of defeats the point on that one. So I'm trying to be strategic, but at the same time get kicked off YouTube, because it's like, to me, it's like, I on the judgment day, I want to get like 2 thumbs up from Jesus being like, yo, good job, you spoke the truth, I'm proud of you, good job. And so for all my brothers and sisters in Christ to know this, you got to share it with your friends and family. Yeah, they're going to think you're crazy and all that, but we got to speak up, we got to share the truth, and we got to let people know what's really going on. And that's no wildfire, y'all. That's no wildfire happening in Hawaii. And part of the reason you might be wondering, like, why am I here rather than why am I here in Mexico rather than Hawaii? And it's like, well, part of the reason I'm here is because I'm seeking, maybe I'm supposed to be somewhere else at this time. God's given me a few dreams. I made YouTube videos about it. I had a dream about a FEMA camp on Big Island, essentially a quarantine prison. When I was living on Molokai, I had a dream about Honolulu getting nuked. And then when I was living on Kauai, I had a dream about the invasion of Kauai, and I saw a bunch of missiles flying in the sky, battleships on fire. Essentially, World War III was brought to the island of Kauai. And in that dream in particular, I was in, what's it called? Not Polehale, it was Poipu. I was in Poipu in the dream. And so, yeah, anyways, y'all, I just want you to have an open mind and realize when you see those airplanes spraying, and most of it, y'all, I've lived on Big Island, I've lived on Maui, I lived on Molokai, I spent a little bit of time on Lanai and Oahu, and I spent most of my time on Kauai. And I gotta say that Maui, every time I visited Maui, I almost saw, I might get censored for saying that word, but I almost saw airplanes spraying chemicals almost every single day. This is World War III. World War III started a while ago, and it mainly took off in 2020, and this is the spiritual war. It's a spiritual war, the war against our body. That's why there's poison in the water, fluoride in the water. There's just genetically modified food, Roundup, pesticides, herbicides in the food. There's spraying chemicals in the sky. That's food, water, air, y'all. 3 most important things we need to survive: food, water, air, for the human body to survive. Then mentally, it's like you have to go to school. If you don't go to school, if you don't send your kids to school, you go to jail. That's why a lot of people are homeschooling their children now, which is the best option, I would say. And you got to take all these I can't say that word as well. You got to take all these hokey pokies, jabs, all that. And with Hollywood, we're getting programmed with the movies, with the music, with the indoctrination through the school system. Everyone's worshiping the dollar. When it says in the dollar, "In God we trust," on the back of the dollar bill, that's not Jesus Christ. That's not Heavenly Father. That's not Heavenly Mother. That's the devil. They're worshiping the dollar. They're worshiping materialism. That's the God that America worships. And unfortunately, America's got bad karma. And I've been studying a lot of history, and we can go all the way back to like 1912, 1913 with the creation of the Federal Reserve. Now, there were 3 men who opposed the Federal Reserve and were blocking it from being started. Well, all 3 of those men died on the Titanic. So call that a conspiracy right there. Then you have World War I, and it's like, well, why did America enter World War I? Have any of you ever thought about that? Why did America enter a European Civil War? Well, when you look at it, it was because those who controlled the media at the time, which were Jewish bankers, they controlled the media, and they manipulated and brainwashed the people into getting us into a European Civil War, which brought America into World War I because of the Balfour Declaration.
Now, the war, World War I, in which the United States participated, had absolutely no reason to be our war. We went in there, we were railroaded into it. If I can be vulgar, we were suckered into that war merely so that the Zionists of the world could obtain Palestine. Now, that is something that the people in the United States have never been told. They never knew why we went into World War I. Now, what happened? After we got into the war, the Zionists went to Great Britain, and they said, well, we performed our part of the agreement. let's have something in writing that shows that you are going to keep your bargain and give us Palestine after you win the war. Because they didn't know whether the war would last another year or another 10 years. So they started to work out a receipt. The receipt took the form of a letter, and it was worded in very cryptic language so that the world at large wouldn't know what it was all about. And that was called the Balfour Declaration. The Balfour Declaration was merely Great Britain's promise to pay the Zionists what they had agreed upon as a consideration for getting the United States into the war. So this great Balfour Declaration that you hear so much about is just as phony as a $3 bill, and I don't think I can make it more emphatic than that. Now, that is where all the trouble started. The United States was in the war. The United States crushed Germany. We went in there, and it's history, you know what happened. Now, when the war was ended, and the Germans went to Paris, to the Paris Peace Conference in 1919, there were 117 Jews there as a delegation representing the Jews, headed by Bernard Baruch. I was there, I ought to know. Now what happened? The Jews at that peace conference, when they were cutting up Germany and parceling out Europe to all these nations that claimed a right to a certain part of European territory, the Jews said, how about Palestine for us? And they produced, for the first time, to the knowledge of Germans, this Balfour Declaration. So the Germans, for the first time, realized, oh, that was the game. That's why the United States came into the war. And the Germans, for the first time, realized that they were defeated. They suffered this terrific reparations that was slapped onto them because the Zionists wanted Palestine. And they were determined to get it at any cost. Now that brings us up to another very interesting point. When the Germans realized this, they naturally resented it. Up to that time, the Jews had never been better off in any country in the world than they had been in Germany. You had Mr. Rathenau there, who was maybe 100 times as important in industry and finance as Bernard Baruch in this country. You had Mr. Ballin, who owned the two big steamship lines, the North German Lloyd and the Hamburg American line, thank you. You had Mr. Bleichroeder, who was the banker for the Hohenzollern family. You had the Warburgs in Hamburg, who were the big merchant bankers, the biggest in the world. The Jews were doing very well in Germany. No question about that. Now, the Germans felt, well, that was quite a sellout. It was a sellout that I can best compare. Suppose the United States was at war today with the Soviet Union. And we were winning. And we told the Soviet Union, well, let's quit. We offer you peace terms. Let's forget the whole thing. And all of a sudden, Red China came into the war as an ally of the Soviet Union. And throwing them into the war brought about our defeat. A crushing defeat, with a reparations the likes of which man's imagination cannot encompass. Imagine, then, if we found out that it was the Chinese in this country, our Chinese citizens, who all the time we thought they were loyal citizens working with us, were selling us out to the Soviet Union, and it was through them that Red China was brought into the war against us. How would we feel in the United States against Chinese? I don't think one of them would dare show its face on any street. There wouldn't be lampposts enough convenient to take care of them. Imagine how we would feel. Well, that's how the Germans felt towards these Jews. We've been so nice to them, and from 1905 on, when the first communist revolution in Russia failed, and the Jews had to scramble out of Russia, they all went to Germany, and Germany gave them refuge, and they were treated very nicely. And here, they sold Germany down the river for no reason at all, other than they wanted Palestine as a so-called Jewish commonwealth.
The Balfour Declaration was between the Rothschild family and the British royal family, and essentially the Rothschilds made a deal with the British royal family saying, hey, if you give us Palestine, which is modern-day Israel, we'll bring America into the war because we control the newspapers and the media, and we'll manipulate the American people into wanting to go to war with Germany in World War I. Look at Pearl Harbor. That's another conspiracy that happened in Hawaii.
Though it goes unmentioned in America's government-issue school textbooks, documents and recordings have been declassified and released through Freedom of Information Act requests, proving that America's entry into World War II was another calculated event and not the result of a surprise Japanese attack. A 1940 Gallup poll showed 83% of the public was against intervention. A good pretext was needed to gain support from an intransigent public. 32nd President Franklin Delano Roosevelt was a 33rd degree Mason, Committee of 300 member, grandson of an opium smuggler, and nephew of Frederick Delano, an original Federal Reserve boardman. FDR stayed in office for 12 years, 1933 to 1945, choosing skull and bonesman Henry Stimson as Secretary of War for the last 5 years. Henry Stimson was also Secretary of War to his brother bonesman, President Taft, from 1911 to 1913 during the build-up to World War I. With the aid of fellow Mason and Committee of 300 member, Britain's Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, these three secret society elites would help lead us into World War II. David Icke wrote, Roosevelt, an Illuminati bloodline wholly owned by the Council on Foreign Relations, set about provoking Japan into an attack with a number of measures, including the targeting of Japanese oil supplies. As a congressional investigation heard in 1945, the messages indicating a decision to go to war with the United States and Britain, though not with Russia, were intercepted and decoded on December 3, 1941, 4 days before Pearl Harbor. These messages subsequently went missing from Navy files. Other decoded messages gave Roosevelt prior warning of the attack, but the public were not told, and nor were the sitting targets in Hawaii. In all, Roosevelt had information from 8 different sources indicating a probable attack. The historian Robert Stinnett revealed the results of 17 years of research into the Pearl Harbor conspiracy in his book Day of Deceit, The Truth About FDR and Pearl Harbor. His research included more than 1 million documents obtained under the Freedom of Information Act, which show that knowledge of the Japanese plans was kept from commanders in Hawaii, the very same men who were later made scapegoats for what happened. One very early warning came almost a full year before the attack, on January 27, 1941. Joseph Grew, the U.S. ambassador to Tokyo, wrote a letter to Roosevelt stating specifically that in the event of war, Pearl Harbor would be Japan's first target. Months later, on July 22, 1941, a report by Admiral Richmond Turner read, quote, "It is generally believed that shutting off the American supply of petroleum will lead promptly to the invasion of Netherland East Indies. It seems certain that she, Japan, would also include military action in the Philippine Islands, which would immediately involve us in a Pacific War." This is precisely what would happen. Alex Jones wrote, "Months before the attack, they knew the Japanese were preparing for an all-out assault in the Pacific. The History Channel and many historical records have reported that 12 days prior to the attack, Roosevelt knew the actual date of the strike. The government had in its possession Admiral Yamamoto's communique reading, quote, "On the morning of December 7, we will attack the Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor and deal a death blow." 2 weeks before the Pearl Harbor attack, on November 25, 1941, after a conversation with Secretary of War Henry Stimson, Roosevelt wrote in his diary, quote, "The question was how we should maneuver them into the position of firing the first shot without too much danger to ourselves. It was desirable to make sure the Japanese be the ones to do this, so that there should remain no doubt in anyone's mind as to who were the aggressors." On November 26th, the day after Roosevelt's diary entry, he received a very suspicious phone call from Winston Churchill. A large Japanese fleet, including 6 aircraft carriers, had recently gone missing, and Churchill said to Roosevelt in the recording, quote, "I can assure you that their goal is the fleet in Hawaii at Pearl Harbor." Roosevelt goes on to ask, quote, "The obvious implication is that the Japs are going to do a Port Arthur on us at Pearl Harbor. Do you concur?" Churchill says he does indeed, and Roosevelt adds, quote, "I will have to consider the entire problem. A Japanese attack on us, which would result in war between, and certainly you as well, would certainly fulfill 2 of the most important requirements of our policy." Exactly what requirements and what policy Roosevelt was referring to is unknown, but one thinks back to fellow 33rd degree Mason Albert Pike's 1871 letter to Mazzini about fomenting 3 world wars. It was also Churchill's fellow Committee of 300 member and Mason H.G. Wells who predicted, in his 1933 book The Shape of Things to Come, that a Second World War would start around 1940, originating from a German-Polish dispute. Were Albert Pike, H.G. Wells, and other Masons prophetic in their visions of the future, or were they knowingly, actively working towards a long-planned objective? Jim Marrs wrote, "As hard to believe as it may be for Americans brought up on wartime propaganda films and publications devoted merely to war technology and battles, World War II was largely the result of infighting between secret occult societies composed of wealthy businessmen that eventually led to international tensions that provoked open warfare. As in other conflicts, the manipulation and influence of these societies is found in the origins and finances of the war, not on the battlefields. Abundant evidence now exists indicating that World War II was brought about by agents and members of secret societies connected to the Illuminati and Freemasonry in both Germany and Britain. The day after the Roosevelt-Churchill phone call, on November 27, 1941, news of the Japanese fleet's probable approach on Pearl Harbor reached CFR-connected U.S. Army Chief of Staff George C. Marshall. On the same day, he sent a message to Hawaiian commanders stating, quote, "Hostile action possible at any moment. If hostilities cannot be avoided, the United States desires that Japan commit the first overt act. This policy should not be construed as restricting you to a course of action that might jeopardize your defense." The Honolulu Advertiser front-page headline on November 30th, 1941 read, "Japan may strike over weekend." Still, the military was told to go to the lowest level of readiness. The ships in the harbor were lined up in tight rows, and the aircraft on the airfields were put into circles, nose-tip to nose-tip. During the week before the attack, the U.S. intercepted a Code Purple message sent to the Japanese embassy in Washington, ordering them to destroy all classified documents and prepare to evacuate the country. On December 4th, Australian intelligence reported to Roosevelt that the missing Japanese fleet was indeed moving toward Pearl Harbor. That same day, Roosevelt specifically ordered the Pacific Fleet moved into a compact and exposed formation of snug rows. Pearl Harbor Admiral James Richardson repeatedly objected to such strategic suicide and was actually replaced for refusing to position the fleet as ordered. Not only was the Pearl Harbor fleet intentionally lined up nose-tip to nose-tip for Japan's carpet-bombing convenience, but all the brand-new U.S. ships and aircraft were moved away, leaving only the older ships to be sacrificed. Jim Marrs wrote, "According to author John Tolland, Separate warnings regarding a pending attack on Pearl Harbor, though varying as to a specific time, came from U.S. Ambassador to Japan Joseph Crew, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, Senator Guy Gillette, Congressman Martin Dees, Brigadier General Elliot Thorpe in Java, and Colonel F.G.I. Weigerman, the Dutch military attaché in Washington. Later, Dutch naval officer Captain Johan Ranette said sources in U.S. intelligence told him on December 6th that the Japanese carriers were only 400 miles northwest of Hawaii. During investigations after the attack, Marshal and Navy Secretary Frank Knox both testified that they could not recall their whereabouts the night of December 6th. It was later revealed that they were both in the White House with Roosevelt. 4 years later, another 33rd degree Mason, Harry Truman, still under the direction of Bonesman's Secretary of War Henry Stimson, dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan, ending World War II. In fact, Japan was waving their white flag and had already surrendered to the US's terms and conditions before the bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But in order to make an example out of Japan, and to show the world US weaponry and military dominance, Truman did not honor the surrender until after the bombs were dropped. David Icke wrote, "This is the background to Harry S. Truman, the Freemason placeman who refused to accept Japan's terms of surrender, ordered the atomic devastation, and then accepted the surrender on the same terms he had refused before. The bombs were dropped because as one phase ended, another was immediately begun, the Cold War. And it is so much easier to engender the fear necessary for that if people have seen for themselves what happens when one of these devices explodes. After the war, the world was mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically devastated. This allowed the banks to make vast fortunes lending money to governments to rebuild the societies destroyed by a war the same banks had funded. This massively increased the debt owed by nations to private banks, and the control over those countries increased in proportion. The desperation for peace made the world open to the main reason the Brotherhood had created the war, the formation of the United Nations. Problem, reaction, solution. The charter for the United Nations, the worldwide body the Brotherhood so badly wanted, was written by a committee of the Council on Foreign Relations. Tex Mars wrote, "The best of historians now admit, for example, that President Franklin D. Roosevelt and his corrupt Masonic associates knew in advance of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor that catapulted the United States into war. The Illuminati wanted World War, and the American airmen, soldiers, and sailors who died on December 7, 1941, were considered necessary to precipitate the USA's entrance into World War II. The U.S. government also had prior knowledge of both the 1993 Oklahoma City bombing of the Murrah Federal Building and the 9/11 bombing attacks on the World Trade Center and Pentagon. The massive loss of life was no obstacle as far as the elite were concerned. Their cold-blooded agenda is calculated to engender chaos and destruction in a never-ending alchemical process of bringing ordo ab chao, order out of chaos. To the elite, murder is business as usual."
And when I first saw one of those photos of Hawaii, I honestly thought it was Pearl Harbor at first. But you look at President Roosevelt, and he had multiple warnings that the Japanese were going to attack. But he didn't warn anybody. He purposely ignored the warnings because he wanted to go to war with Japan. So President Roosevelt purposely let the Japanese attack the base of Pearl Harbor so that America gets sucked into World War II. And then you look at the Korean War, that was a complete mess. And now we have North Korea, South Korea because of that. Then you have the Vietnam War. We have the Gulf of Tonkin.
On August 2nd, 1964, the USS Maddox destroyer was supposedly conducting reconnaissance in the Gulf of Tonkin when fired upon by North Vietnamese forces in Swat gunboats. The Maddox, however, was not on a reconnaissance mission. It was part of a joint CIA South Vietnamese covert intelligence operation called Operation Plan 34A. Paul Joseph Watson wrote, "Far from being an unprovoked attack, as President Lyndon Johnson had stated, the attack was an expected retaliation as a result of aggressive CIA South Vietnamese maneuvers. Johnson himself acknowledged Operation Plan 34A in recently released White House tape recordings. Quote, "There have been some covert operations in that Tonkin Gulf area that we have been carrying on, blowing up some bridges and things of that kind, roads and so forth. So I imagine the North Vietnamese wanted to put a stop to it." Once again, the people were manipulated into believing a false flag reason for entering the Vietnam War. This time, the public was told a friendly ship came under unprovoked enemy attack, when in fact, our ship was the aggressor. From the Terror Storm DVD, in the summer of 1964, President Lyndon Baines Johnson needed a pretext to commit the American people to the already expanding covert war in Southeast Asia. In November of 2001, the LBJ Presidential Library and Museum released tapes of phone conversations with the President and then Defense Secretary Robert McNamara, where they openly discussed plans to use the staged Gulf of Tonkin incident as a pretext to expand the war. In late 2005, the National Security Agency declassified its own official history of the Gulf of Tonkin and admitted that the intelligence agency officers had deliberately skewed the intelligence and claimed that Vietnamese patrol boats had attacked U.S. destroyers on August 4, 1964, when in reality they had done nothing, even while being fired on by U.S. forces. On August 4, 1964, the U.S. destroyers received radar and radio signals that were misinterpreted as being another enemy attack from the North Vietnamese Navy. Supposedly a 2-hour shootout ensued, but in reality there were likely no enemy ships out there. An hour after the incident, Captain John J. Herrick of the USS Maddox sent a cable admitting the attack may not have been an attack after all. Captain John J. Herrick said on August 4, 1964, quote, "Review of action makes many reported contacts and torpedoes fired appear doubtful. Freak weather effects on radar and overeager sonar men may have accounted for many reports. No actual visual sightings by Maddox. Suggest complete evaluation before any further action taken." Naval aviator James Stockdale said, "I had the best seat in the house to watch that event, and our destroyers were just shooting at phantom targets. There were no PT boats out there. There was nothing but black water and American firepower." With no justification whatsoever, on the evening of August 4th, Johnson stated, "The initial attack on the destroyer Maddox on August 2nd was repeated today by a number of hostile vessels. Actually, no U.S. ships were fired upon, and there were likely no Vietnamese boats present either, but Johnson reported, quote, "We believe at least 2 of the attacking boats were sunk." Later on, however, in 1965, Johnson was quoted referring to the Tonkin incident, admitting, quote, "For all I know, our Navy was shooting at whales out there." Paul Joseph Watson wrote, "The Vietnam War killed 1 million Vietnamese and 58,000 Americans. It was launched after 2 incidents in August 1964, the first of which was provoked, and the second never happened. With careful avoidance of the facts, then President Lyndon Baines Johnson was able to ram through the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, denouncing those who raised suspicious voices as anti-American and receiving a validation for war."
What do we have after that? I mean, of course, you got September 11th. That's a bunch of bogus, obviously.
On the morning of September 11th, 2001, 19 men armed with box cutters directed by a man on dialysis in a cave fortress halfway around the world using a satellite phone and a laptop directed the most sophisticated penetration of the most heavily defended airspace in the world. overpowering the passengers and the military combat-trained pilots on 4 commercial aircraft before flying those planes wildly off course for over an hour without being molested by a single fighter interceptor. These 19 hijackers, devout religious fundamentalists who like to drink alcohol, snort cocaine, and live with pink-haired strippers, managed to knock down 3 buildings with 2 planes in New York. While in Washington, a pilot who couldn't handle a single-engine Cessna was able to fly a 757 in an 8,000-foot descending 270-degree corkscrew turn to come exactly level with the ground, hitting the Pentagon and the Budget Analyst Office where DoD staffers were working on the mystery of the $2.3 trillion that Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld had announced missing from the Pentagon's coffers in a press conference the day before, on September 10th, 2001. Luckily, the news anchors knew who did it within minutes.
Osama bin Laden.
The pundits knew within hours.
Osama bin Laden.
The administration knew within the day.
Terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them.
And the evidence literally fell into the FBI's lap.
That a hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
But for some reason, a bunch of crazy conspiracy theorists demanded an investigation into the greatest attack on American soil in history. That investigation was delayed, underfunded, set up to fail, a conflict of interest, and a cover-up from start to finish. It was based on testimony extracted through torture, the records of which were destroyed. It failed to mention the existence of WTC-7, Able Danger, P-TECH, Sibel Edmonds, OBL and the CIA, and the drills of hijacked aircraft being flown into buildings that were being simulated at the precise same time that those events were actually happening. It was lied to by the Pentagon, the CIA, the Bush administration, and as for Bush and Cheney, well, no one knows what they told it because they testified in secret, off the record, not under oath, and behind closed doors. It didn't bother to look at who funded the attacks because that question is ultimately of little practical significance. Still, the 9/11 Commission did brilliantly answering all of the questions the public had, except most of the victims' family members' questions, and pinned blame on all the people responsible, although no one so much as lost their job, determining the attacks were
failure of imagination.
Because
nobody in our government, at least, and I don't think the prior government that could envision flying airplanes into buildings.
Except the Pentagon, FEMA, NORAD, and the NRO. The DIA destroyed 2.5 terabytes of data on Able Danger, but that's okay because it probably wasn't important. The SEC destroyed their records on the investigation into the insider trading before the attacks, but that's okay because destroying the records of the largest investigation in SEC history is just part of routine record keeping. NIST has classified the data that they used for their model of WTC-7's collapse, but that's okay because knowing how they made their model of the collapse would jeopardize public safety. The FBI has argued that all material related to their investigation of 9/11 should be kept secret from the public, but that's okay because the FBI probably has nothing to hide. This man never existed, nor is anything he had to say worthy of your attention, and if you say otherwise, you are a paranoid conspiracy theorist and deserve to be shunned by all of humanity. Likewise him, and her, and her, and her, and him. Osama bin Laden lived in a cave fortress in the hills of Afghanistan, but somehow got away. Then he was hiding out in Tora Bora, but somehow got away. Then he lived in Abbottabad for years, taunting the most comprehensive intelligence dragnet employing the most sophisticated technology in the history of the world for a decade, releasing video after video with complete impunity and getting younger and younger as he did so, before finally being found in a daring SEAL team raid which wasn't recorded on video, in which he didn't resist or use his wife as a human shield, and in which these crack special forces operatives panicked and killed this unarmed man, supposedly the best source of intelligence about those dastardly terrorists on the entire planet. Then they dumped his body in the ocean before telling anyone about it. Then a couple dozen of that team's members died in a helicopter crash in Afghanistan. This is the story of 9/11, brought to you by the media which told you the hard truths about...
His head could be seen to move violently forward.
And...
They took the babies out of the incubators.
And...
Mobile production facilities.
And...
The rescue of Jessica Lynch.
If you have any questions about this story, you are a batshit, paranoid, tinfoil, dog-abusing baby hater and will be reviled by everyone. If you love your country and or freedom, happiness, rainbows, rock and roll, puppy dogs, apple pie, and your grandma, you will never ever express doubts about any part of this story to anyone. Ever. This has been a public service announcement by the Friends of the FBI, CIA, NSA, DIA, SEC, NSM, White House, NIST, and the 9/11 Commission. Because ignorance is strength.
What I'm just saying, y'all, is there's a consistent history of America getting into these wars and they got bad karma. America's got bad karma. The point of today's video is to kind of just wake some people up and be like, yo, these aren't natural wildfires. This is energy weapons. This is an attack on the people. Don't believe the news. Don't take their hokey pokies and their jabs. Like, get straight with Jesus Christ. Keep his commandments. Seek forgiveness. Baptize yourself in water. Get straight with God, because this is a battle for your body, for your mind, and ultimately for your soul. They want your soul. They're attacking our body through the food, water, and air. They're attacking our mind through the social media, through the TikTok, the Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, blah, 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 Netflix, Hulu, all of it, all the movies, all the music. It's all programming, y'all. Most of it's programming. And you got to brainwash yourself with good stuff. You got to brainwash yourself with gospel music, with beautiful, like, Hindu music, like Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That's the best type of brainwashing. Brainwash yourself with the Bhagavad Gita, with the Holy Bible, because we got very dirty minds. Most people got very, very dirty minds, and so we got to brainwash ourselves with clean, uprising spiritual material that comes straight from heaven, from the Most High God. And then ultimately, there's a battle for your soul, and the ultimate protector for your soul is King Jesus Christ. And so you got to get straight with Jesus. You got to seek forgiveness for the breaking of the 10 Commandments, for going against the Buddhist Eightfold Noble Path, for going against the yogic yamas and niyamas, the Christian 10 Commandments. They're all the same thing. They're guidelines of morality, of how to be a good person. Most of us have broken all those rules. However, Jesus Christ can clear your bad karma. He can forgive you of your sins and give you a clean slate, and he can protect you. He's the most powerful name he is. Why? Because he holds the keys of hell and death. When he was crucified, he went to hell for 3 days, and he personally took the keys of hell and death from Satan, came back, rebuilt his body, and went to heaven. Jesus Christ is not only the King of heaven and the King of earth, he's the King of hell as well. He's the King of all dimensions, all realms, everything. And he's the good shepherd, he's the great shepherd, because not only will he lead us to the greener pastures of Christ, Krishna, and crystalline consciousness, but he'll protect you along the way from the big bad wolf. And what does it say? In the end times, there'll be the separation from the sheep from the goats. And what is that one thing? They always have goat. Like, oh, he's the goat. Greatest of all time. Goat, goat, goat. And it's like, what's Baphomet? Baphomet's a goat. Yo, in this scenario, you want to be a sheep. Because Jesus Christ is going to separate the sheep from the goats. And the goats get eaten by the big bad wolf. And the big bad wolf, the enemy, the adversary, the devil, probably Lucifer, the wolf, and wants you to be a goat because he's hungry. And he wants your soul, he wants your mind, and he wants your body. But Jesus Christ, the great shepherd, he protects you. He protects his flock. He leaves the 99 sheep behind and goes off and finds that one lost black sheep, that one lost rainbow cosmic sheep, and he brings you back into the fold, into the protection. Those black swans, those white tigers out there, the outliers. And we're going to be the ones that bring heaven on earth by following in the footsteps of King Jesus Christ and embodying this Christ, Krishna, crystalline consciousness. He's disciplining us, making us disciplined, discipled, sanctified saints, obedient, devoted devotees. Purified purists, and it's beautiful, y'all. I'm feeling it right now. I feel the love in my heart right now just speaking about this. And so for all y'all brothers and sisters in Hawaii, may God bless you. Aloha keakua. For all my brothers and sisters in California, I was born in Long Beach, California, but y'all gotta wake up. Those aren't natural wildfires happening every year in California. Those are directed energy weapons. Some of them might be natural, but I would say for the most part, most of them are pretty man-made. And like the President of the United States said, he who controls the weather controls the world. And they're trying to get people out of Hawaii. Hawaii's amazing. And I mean, I guess technically it worked for me. I mean, but I'll go back. If God gives me clarity that God wants me placed in Hawaii, I'll go do it, because I have faith in the Most High. I don't care about their new world, NWO, all that. Like, I don't care. King Jesus Christ is way more powerful than any of these demonic Satanists, any of these pedophiles, any of these bankers. Jesus Christ is the King of Kings. Every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord and Jesus Christ is King of all. And so it's better that you get straight with him now, because there's going to be a judgment day, and essentially the idea is that if your heart is lighter than a feather, you go to heaven. But if your heart's not lighter than a feather, well, you don't really go to heaven. And what is heaven? It's probably in the astral realm. And essentially death in this realm is birth in the astral realm. But I would say there's probably hellish astral realms and heavenly astral realms, and it's based on our karma. But so like essentially Jesus Christ has the ability to clear your karma, to forgive your karma, to forgive you of your sins. But that's not just it. After that, then you got to keep his commandments. He says in John 14:15, if you love me, keep my commandments. Then in St. John says in 1 John chapter 2, verses 3 through 4, he says, hereby we do know Jesus Christ if we keep his commandments. And if we claim that we love Jesus Christ and that we know Jesus Christ, but we don't keep his commandments, we're a liar and the truth is not in us. And then St. James says faith without works is dead. And what are the works? The works are keeping the commandments. Don't listen to this nonsense from most Christians that say you're saved by the grace of God. Jesus Christ never once spoke of a thing called grace. Jesus Christ did say, if you love me, keep my commandments. And that takes work, y'all. So he'll forgive you of your bad karma, clear your bad sins, but then you got to keep his commandments, which takes work. And then when we stumble, man, you got to talk to Jesus, because we're changing some hardcore habits. And I stumble a lot with the adultery one, thou shalt not commit adultery, because Jesus Christ says if you even look at a woman with lust, you've committed adultery in your heart. And so that's through the pornography, through the masturbation, through the promiscuous sex. And I'm doing my best to save myself for my wife. And that's why I'm not making them OnlyFans. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm sorry. I know a lot of ladies out there want to see my OnlyFans channel, but I'm not going to whore myself out on that. I'm being sarcastic. I'm trying to tell you, ladies, get off that trashy website. Think of your future husband. Think of your future children, your future grandchildren. What do you want them thinking of grandma 50 years from now? Like, oh, grandma was a whore on the internet. Look at all these videos of her. And it's like, come on, think. Don't whore yourself out for money. But my condolences to the... I know this doesn't come up as the most serious video, but for the people that died in Hawaii, it could be more than 36 people, it could be less than 36. The only reason why I question it is because, well, the media has a tendency of lying about death counts. I'm surprised it wasn't 33 people dead, because they usually use the number 33 when it was during 2020, 2021. It was usually like 33 people dead, 33 people.
As of today, and I say as of today at this hour, we have 33 confirmed positive tests for the virus.
Yesterday we had 22 cases. Today we have 33 cases, so it's gone up by 11. That brings, those are 11 new cases. 22 goes to 33.
As we sort through this here in Arkansas, today we have 33 confirmed positive cases in Arkansas.
As of today, we have 33 confirmed cases with Boston residents. We expect those numbers to climb.
As of this afternoon, we have 33 Pennsylvanians who have tested positive.
So as of this morning, there were 33 confirmed cases in North Carolina.
Good evening to you. Lots to get to tonight. I'm Leon Hendricks. We want to start with new information into our newsroom. Within the past couple of hours, there are now 33 confirmed cases of the in Michigan.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the news at 6. I'm Richard Gerard. Karina Corral has the night off. More cases in the were confirmed today in San Luis Obispo County, bringing the total number now to 33.
Right now, Georgia is reporting a total of 99 cases in 19 counties. That is 33 new cases from just yesterday.
Good afternoon, I'm Karen Swenson. More cases and more events affected. Here is the latest news. There are now 33 cases in Louisiana.
As expected. The number of cases of COVID-19 jumps. A total of 33 people in our state have been tested and are confirmed to have.
Day 4 of the shelter-at-home order brought 6 new confirmed cases of the to San Luis Obispo County, bringing the total number to 33.
All troopers will be professional, polite, and will treat everyone with dignity and respect.
These latest steps as the number of confirmed cases in Rhode Island jumps by 33 overnight.
Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest
responsibility
is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities.
The El Paso, Las Cruces communities.
Eastern Iowa communities.
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
we are concerned about the trouble and irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these fake stories simply aren't true without checking facts first. first. Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 This is extremely dangerous.
This is extremely dangerous.
This is extremely dangerous.
Looking at those photos, honestly, I'd be surprised if there weren't more. 36 doesn't seem like that much for those photos that were shared. And yeah, all right, y'all. Try to keep this one short, but these videos always go long. May God bless all y'all. Namaste. Amen.
God, Krishna, Christ, Guru. God, Krishna, Christ, Guru. God, Krishna, Christ, Gurus. God, Krishna, Christ, Gurus. I surrender to thee. I surrender to thee. I surrender to thee. I surrender to thee. God, Krishna, Christ, Gurus. God, Krishna, Christ, Gurus. God, Krishna, Christ, Gurus. God, Krishna, Christ, Gurus.
Krishna, Krishna.